I think it's about 4:02, and since we have people joining in and some of you are here, we might as well go ahead and begin. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this African Tea Time session. It's going to be our last this semester. I believe we have all the old members, old in terms of being here at tea time previously, and we also have new members joining us from different places in the world. Some of you from MSU, some from Africa, and I believe others might be joining from elsewhere. So please feel welcome. And our discussion today is going to be facilitated, at least the first part, by Emmanuel Chima. And Emmanuel is a graduate student here at MSU School of Social Work. Emmanuel, when your time comes, you can say something about yourself. You can introduce yourself more. But at this time, I really want to thank and welcome our speakers. We have two of them, Naomi and Martin. They are joining us from Kenya. No, Naomi is in, they're from Kenya for sure, but Naomi is right now in Uganda for a business event. Thank you, Naomi. And Martin is in Kenya. And you can imagine it's after 11 p.m., but they have sacrificed time to be here, to be able to speak to us. I just wanted to minimize this a little. All right. So they have one presentation, and the title for the discussion is, it's already on the screen. It says Gender and Sexuality in the African Context. Both of them work with the Forum for African Women Educationalists, and Naomi and Martin, as I told you before, at tea time, we love introducing ourselves, who we are, how we are affiliated with MSU, if we are, like Naomi especially, and anything else that you want us to know about yourself. So at this time, I think I can give it to Martin to begin by introducing yourself, and then Naomi. After that, Emmanuel, I'll expect you to take us through, after their presentations with the discussion. So Martin, do you want to introduce yourself, and then Naomi, and then Emmanuel? Or maybe, no, Emmanuel, please introduce yourself as the moderator of the session, and then we can have Martin, Naomi, and then the presentation. Thank you so much. Emmanuel.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Damaris. Like Damaris said, my name is Emmanuel Chima, and I'm a grad student here at MSU. I'm with the School of Social Work. I am in my third year of a PhD program, and my research interest is refugee psychosocial well-being. Most of my current work has been based on forced displacement in Malawi. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Martin, I invite you to share with us a little bit about your work, and then Naomi will follow after. Happy to see a Spartan presenting today, so go green, Naomi, and welcome all. And we can continue with our presentation today.
Okay, thank you so much, Naomi. Emmanuel, and also thank you so much, Damaris, for the introduction. Thank you also so much for having us be part of the panel today, and it's quite a privilege to be also taking part in this wonderful discussion. So my name is Martin Okhako Jackson. I currently work for FAWE. FAWE in full is Forum for African Women Educationalists. So this is basically an organization that works in the spaces of education for girls and women with a focus on gender equity. Supports also in keeping the girls in school. We also do a lot of interventions around supporting them to raise school fees and just retain, or rather be in school and transition from one level of education to another level of education. So my background basically is in sexual reproductive health. I have a career that is spanning to 12 years by now. Yeah, 12 years in sexual reproductive health. Having done both implementation of SRHR programs in terms of service creation, demand of services and also in the space of lobby and advocacy. That is what we are currently doing. So currently, even as we're having this discussion, I am managing a project that is in 5 African countries. So I think I'm very excited for me to be part of a panel that is talking about gender and sexuality in African context. But over and above that, I've worked in East African, I've worked in Central Africa, and I've also worked in Southern Africa, the different parts of the African nations. That's basically about me, and I think now I'll also allow Naomi to introduce herself. Also, she's the one who will be taking us over the first bit of the slides, or rather the presentation. Then I will pick up from her. Thank you. Welcome, Naomi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you, Damaris, and thank you, Emmanuel, for inviting us and the warm welcome to this online session. It's an honor to get invited back to engage and have a conversation with MSU community. It's been about 2 years since I left. My name is Naomi Kamitha. I graduated from MSU in 2020, so I'm a Spartan through and through. I was part of the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program, and I did my bachelor's degree in Women and Gender Studies, and I was also in the James Madison College doing international relations. After that, I moved back home and I joined FAWE, as Martin has described. We are a Pan-African non-governmental organization that is focused on improving access to education for girls and women. And we are in 34 countries across Africa, and our regional office is based in Nairobi, and that is where Martin and I are based. Specifically, I think I landed in my field of study when it came to transition into the professional world. I work for the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program and Higher Education Access Program. So FAWE supports a scholars program similar to what MSU had, and it is based in Ethiopia and Rwanda. So I support in that program where we have scholars in those two countries, in university and high school, and in Uganda, where I am currently for now, we have a bridging program called Higher Education Access Program. So that's what I do at FAWE. And it's really exciting to talk about gender and sexuality in African context. And I am looking forward to an engaging discussion and a captivating one, and a discussion that is full of, varying opinions on what we think. And I'm really excited. So I'll hand over to Emmanuel, and then can guide me on when.
Thank you both for those introductions. And at this point, I'm going to invite you to take us through your presentation. I trust that you'll be able to situate it within both the African context primarily, but also weaving into it the North American context, seeing as how you're very familiar with it, Naomi, and that is your area of training. And Martin, your expertise is also very broad. So I'll pass it back to you and have you take us through the presentation, following which we'll then ask questions, engage with you. I encourage everyone that's on to note the points of curiosity, to use the chat feature, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you. Okay, so gender and sexuality in African context. I would like to hear from a few of you. What comes to mind anytime you see, this is a topic that we see often in a few spaces. So what comes to mind when you see gender and sexuality in African context? Maybe we can get a few reactions from the people who are in the room.
And I think people, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and talk.
Or to use the chat function.
Oh, yeah.
That's for you to do.
Hello.
Hello, Blessing.
Or Shingi, as you guys will know me. Yeah, so when it comes to this topic, one of the things that immediately comes to mind is a historically very defined roles, or especially coming out of the colonial era where opportunities were heavily tilted towards men as far as education and income generating. By income generating, I mean actually formal employment tilted in the favor of men, with women usually being homemakers and populating the informal sector of the economy predominantly. So of course that's been changing over the years, but that's still a dynamic that I feel the continent is still pushing back against.
Okay, great, thank you so much. All right, any other reactions or comments on the topic of today? Okay, I see Sophia has said intersection of previous beliefs of gender roles and colonial influences. Mm-hmm. All right, I think we can move on from those two, and we can get started on. And I hope that by the end of the presentation, you have had a chance to dissect into some of those comments. So Martin, next slide, please. So sex is defined as biological traits that society associates with being male or female. This is what is visible at birth and can be used to assign a gender. And from there, we get our gender, which is cultural meanings that are attached to being masculine or feminine, and they influence our personal identities. And these can range from man, woman, transgender, gender queer, among others. And this is who a person identifies as. Sexuality is the sexual attraction or practices and identity which may or may not align with the assigned sex and gender. And this ranges from heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexual, queer, among others. So I will focus primarily on gender, and that is what I will focus on discussing with you today. Next slide, please. So gender is defined as socially constructed, and its characteristics of being woman, man, girl, or boy. And this can include roles, norms, behaviors that are associated with being a woman or man or boy. And I think in our cultural context, this sometimes comes out as, binary. It's as if there's a clear binary on what is what. So you'll find that for women, and men, there's a binary separation of what it means to be each of those. So woman, you'll be told, this is who you are, this is how you are supposed to behave, this is your place in society. And if you're a man, you'll be told, this is who you are, this is your place in society. And WHO defines gender as a social construction that people define in terms of femininity and masculinity. So gender it's something that comes from our cultures and the communities that we live in, and it is not set in stone. And in various occasions, it can vary from community to community on the understanding of gender roles. I don't know, maybe a few of you who are from Kenya, and I think this is normally a good example to use, but in most communities, you will find that the physical jobs are assigned to men because of their physical capacities. But then you will come to a few other communities, like in Kenya, among the Maasai women, where you find that they're the ones who build the huts. And that is some of the areas where we find communities being in control of defining the gender roles that are assigned to each group. Next slide, please. So gender in the African context, as I said, it varies and it changes over time. It's something that is fluid and continuously evolving with time, what's happening at the moment, political environment. And I like what someone started by saying in the political and colonial environment. So what happened to gender in Africa? Is it the same pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial, or has it changed? And how has it changed? And how has that had impact on who we are as a society and who many communities are as society? And gender in our context, it is assigned by sex. You know, if when you're born, the identifiable physical characteristics is that you have a penis, then you are assigned male. If you're born and you have a vagina, then you're assigned as female. And if you're born and you're intersex, then where do you fall? Oh, you know, those are some of the questions that we'll be discussing today. It is also most African communities define gender in relation to the following categories: roles, norms, behaviors, powers, and privileges. And this is an often overlooked attribute on what role does power and privileges play in defining which gender you fall under and the gender categories that you are assigned. Martin, we can go to the next slide. So gender in African context, we have some types of genders. I am sure that we are all familiar with all the numerous types of genders that we have. And there are some that are considered acceptable. If you're male, if you're female, if you're intersex, although this in some communities is still a point of contention where people want to be able to place you in a certain category. But then if you do not fit into one category perfectly, then it becomes a point of contention in most communities. And then we have some types of gender that are overlooked or people do not like to talk about. And you will find in most communities, it's something of a hush-hush kind of conversation. But I am hoping that by engaging in such forums and through the work that some of the organizations do, like the work that we do, we are beginning to break these barriers and to encourage conversations around this space. So gender fluid, gender non-conforming, transgender persons, non-binary. And maybe at this point, I can ask us to, kind of give me some response on. I personally know that growing up in Kenya and then moving to America for school, it was kind of my first real interaction with other forms of gender and, beginning to understand what does it even mean when someone doesn't identify as male or female. And that's where I started learning, okay, there are people who identify as transgender, there are people who identify as gender fluid, gender non-conforming, non-binary. And it was a transition moment and a learning moment for me. So I would like to know some of you, what were your experiences with the first time? Maybe you can say what it is that you know from your culture. And when was the first time that you interacted with a different understanding of gender outside what you grew up knowing? You can put your hand up, put a comment in the chat, or just unmute your mic and give a reaction.
Okay, Naomi, can I go?
Yes, you can, Damaris.
Yes, I will say just like you, I came to have an exposure to different types of gender except for male and female when I came to the US, and that's quite a long time ago. I mean, not very long time ago, but it's 2006, I would say. And you can imagine, it's not as if we don't have all these categories, all these groups of people in Kenya. It would be wrong to say we don't. But as Naomi has already said, it's not a topic that is discussed not even often. By the time I was coming to MSc, I wouldn't say that I even ever, whether in school, because I came from my graduate school, it's not a discussion that I would say even within my undergrad program I was ever involved in. We don't talk about it. And I would say it's because of culture for sure. And also it's because at that time, it's different, a little different from now. People who didn't identify as male or female didn't have a space where they can come out or where they can express themselves. So to me, I would say we definitely, because this is being intersex or identifying as a different agenda that is not male or female, it's not something that people choose. So I wouldn't say that now, since we've started talking about it, that's when this category, community, or population of people started existing in Kenya. I'm giving an example of Kenya because that's where I come from. So, and it happened when I was in a class, not in, my background is education administration. I don't remember having a discussion like this in any of my classes, but when I did an elective course in sociology. So we, in sociology, we discuss about different cultures, different experiences. And in class, it was very open for my colleagues, students, the teacher also to speak openly about issues to do with the other different genders that I was not familiar, I wouldn't say, but not really, I didn't have an understanding of them. So it was kind of a shock because I said, how do people speak about these things outrightly or publicly like this? But I would say it was a good moment and it helped me open up to learn more. And I'm still learning, I would say, Naomi, so I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you so much, Damaris. Okay, I see a comment in the chat from Sophia. I think it's the same with social movements everywhere. Younger generations are more accepting. People usually tell their friends they're gender non-conforming before telling their parents or family. Older generations try to portray it as inherently profane. That's very interesting. And how many of you feel that that's the case or can relate to that? Our younger generation, even to now, I'll put myself in the younger generation category. Are we more accepting of gender non-conforming individuals than people who are in the older generation, or is it just that we have grown up in a different culture and in a different kind of environment and times have changed and our understanding and perspectives are different?
I could chime in, Naomi. I think for me, so I moved to the US from Malawi for graduate school like Damaris. And I think a learning moment for me was acquiring language to enter into the discourse. Like Damaris said, the different gender categories do exist on the continent, but I think everyone is fully equipped with the language to be able to enter into that discourse. So for me, that was the learning curve that I experienced when I came to graduate school, is to be able to articulate gender nonconformity.
Yeah. I think that's a lot like me, being in a gender field and women in gender studies. I think it was something that I had to learn every day, and it's really opened my eyes and changed my perspective on a lot of things. So Cameron, I think we're on. Cameron, please go ahead.
I kind of just agree with what was said by Sophia too in the chat. I just feel that older generations are more judgmental than younger generations are more accepting of others.
Okay. So you're saying older generations can tend to be more judgmental, while younger generation
Just
are
because
more.
they're more set in their ways and used to their culture growing up, and it's a lot different and they're not as accepting.
Okay, yeah. I think Martin and I are working in the space that we work in and interacting with communities, especially African communities in Africa. We tend to come across people who have different and varying kinds of understanding on this topic. And sometimes you will find that there are also younger people who might be judgmental or be resistant to or not be exposed to the conversation. And so it takes time, and you have to understand the cultural setting where you are bringing up the conversation. There's a lot that is at play when you want to engage people in this conversation. Okay, I see John. Please go ahead.
Hi. So
Hi.
I spent a couple of years in Zambia, and during my time there, I went to a museum where someone was talking about some of the pre-colonial history of Zambia. And they were talking about how some of these like gender norms and these like non-binary identities, I think if I'm remembering correctly, existed before colonialism in a much more open kind of way. And but I didn't really look into it much further than that. So I was kind of curious about what either you guys know, or if like that is something that is like recognized or is like kind of coming back. Like, are these identities kind of being what's the way to put it? Like being like retaken up in like a post-colonial movement?
Okay, thank you. From historical literature and from people can come in and chime from the different communities that they're from. But when you look at gender, especially in terms of gender norms and gender identity, pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial, there is a way that it tends to change with what is happening in the environment. And that is why we say that gender is a social construct and it is not stuck in time. And it's not stuck in time. And so they are varying, it changes with what's happening in history. So for instance, when you look at pre-colonial communities, especially let's look at a country like Nigeria among the Igbo women, you would find that they were the traders in that community. And like being engaged in trade and business was a forte for women. But then colonialism comes and there are new ways of lives that are introduced. There is need to separate people, because when you separate people, it's easier to rule and manage. So there's a big emphasis on you are different and you are superior, and this is the role of a man in this community, and this is the role of a woman. Christianity comes in, it kind of builds on that, and the Bible and religion, and I know we have Christians here, and I understand, but also there is a role that Christianity plays in emphasizing the gender roles and gender norms, and that changes how African cultures and communities are organized and how they run their things. And so you find women going back to more of the homemaking kind of roles, and men going out to more of the roles as providers and protectors of their homes and being breadwinners. And now we are here, post-colonial Africa, and it's kind of a journey to try and reclaim the power, but also establishing new norms and roles. And I think that's what I would say on that. And I see we had someone else had a hand up, Jenna. Jenna, you had a contribution. Please go ahead. Okay. Maybe as we wait for Jenna, we can have Blessing. Blessing. Okay. All right. Maybe the reaction will come in at a later time. So maybe Martin. Next slide. Oh, yes. I think that was the last of my slide. You can go back to the previous slide. And I think at this point, I will leave it at that. And we have some questions later where we will build on the discussion on gender in the African context. And I will hand it over to Martin to take us through sexuality. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you so much. I was having a problem unmuting myself. Hi to everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those who may have come a little bit late. Thank you, Naomi, so very much. I think you've already laid the basis for the next set of the discussion. I think we can now just get a deep dive into the sexuality bit. Then from there, we can take questions from both the gender and the sexuality presentations. Then you can see how it actually goes on. So, but basically just to put everything into context as Naomi has already done in terms of the gender thing. And I think we had in some of the, from the discussions, what we've already had, we've had, it's a common understanding that for the African context, for us, like gender is defined right from when we are actually born. It's something that you come and you find it already defined for you, like you don't have to say over it. But it's true, a lot has been changing over the years. And even now, as we have these discussions about generation, I don't know, generation Y and generation X and all that, we are having a crop of individuals or youth who are a little bit empowered. They are not afraid of speaking about their feelings. They're not afraid of actually being who they are, so to speak. Coming from Kenya, of course, I've seen somebody like John has also talked about the context of what he knows about Zambia. Having been also in several African countries, it's actually a fact that there's a lot of space that is actually constrained in terms of what we really think about ourselves, what we can really share out there. We are like in that space where we cannot speak out our minds because of what the people in our community think. And it's an African thing that we really feel like it's something that needs to be changed. People need to really exercise their rights in terms of what they feel about their sexuality. So just get into the first bit, which is basically the definition. So sexuality refers to a person's attitudes and activities relating to sex and the ability to experience or express sexual feelings. So basically, this is what now you feel after you may know that you are born a boy because you have a penis, or you know that you may have been born a girl because you have a vagina. But now we're talking about sexuality. Now we are trying to look at what really comes out in terms of what your feelings are, like in terms of your attitudes towards issues to do with sex, activities that are related to sex, or rather your experiences and how you actually express your sexual feelings. It is all the way we feel, the way we think and act. It's all subject to change over time in relation to our physical bodies as we age and the culture that we live in and how we relate to each other. So we are saying it is bound to change because, of course, we don't live in a cocoon. Most of us come from a community. I've seen Emmanuel has talked about coming from Malawi. Jamaris comes from Kenya. Naomi also comes from Kenya and was also in MSU. So you find the people that were surrounding them in Kenya, when they go to MSU, are totally different. So you may find that over time, what we think about ourselves really come to change. That's why we are saying that it's something that evolves. And even as we age, we tend to pick different sexuality. And that's why we actually come to look at the different sexuality that comes into play. And we can actually try to also set the stage in terms of why do we have the different sexual orientations? Maybe why do people identify to this kind of gender, this kind of sex more than the other? So the common African beliefs on sexuality. So the first one is about political and religious leaders frequently implying that African sexuality is distinct from Western sexuality. So when you look at the spaces that we operate in the African context, and I'll give an example of some of the things that have been happening currently. I don't know if some of you may be following current information from the African countries. So we are saying that the leaders actually imply that African sexuality is distinct from Western sexuality. I remember there was a time when, what was it? What is his name? The other president of the US, that is Barack Obama. When he came to Kenya, there was a lot of tense in the Kenyan nation because people were feeling like, let him come and discuss about any other thing, but let him not come to bring the Western culture of homosexuality or gayism in Kenya. And it is something that even the president on air talking about is open to discussing with the president of the US, many other issues. But when it comes to the discussion about the rights of the people who are living where people who are the same sex, there was a point of departure in that. So it actually just shows that it is something that's already enshrined in our communities and even in the kind of leadership that we have of the day. I'll give us another example in Zambia, not in Zambia, in Uganda. No, sorry, still in Kenya. Recently, the Education CS, who is like a minister here, was on record actually talking about if they're talking about parents whose children are in the space of, the children are not straight, like if you have a gay child, they're advising that the students are not to be allowed to be going to school where they're boarding. So if your child is identified as gay and you're in primary or you are in high school, that you're not allowed to be in that school after the normal learning classes, so that you're supposed to be transitioning to a system where you just go to learn and go back home to your parents, so that you don't, in quotes, like encourage that kind of thing that they call a vice among the other people. So you see there's that space where it's really constrained in terms of you trying to explain your sexuality becomes it's actually like a tall order here in Africa. Then the other one is that it's a common belief that sexuality only exists as a timeless and a singular phenomena that often promotes harmful stereotypes. Then according to modern societal structures, majority of African communities are of the belief that everyone should know and practice only one sexuality. This perception has caused a lot of stigma and other human rights violation against people who don't conform to ideals of heterosexuality across the continent. So at this point, maybe I'd also like us to engage, and maybe I'd like to ask, based on that particular poem, that particular comment, according to modern societal structures, majority of African communities are of the belief that everyone should know and practice only one sexuality. So in Africa, it's like commonly acknowledged that the only sex that is right is actually heterosexual, that is for male and female. But any other thing other than that is actually frowned upon, or other people look at it as something that is not of the norm. But maybe I'd like to ask from where you sit now, most of you, since you're coming from MSU, what has it been and what is the experience like? Just maybe 1 or 2 persons. What is the experience like? Do you have also that kind of, you feel like you are constrained in terms of, not you as a person, but maybe the other people in the institutions, are they allowed to express their sexuality openly, or it's also constrained? You can just unmute and speak, or you can just comment also. Anyone willing to comment? Okay, thank you, John. You can unmute.
Yeah, I don't want to overrun the conversation or anything, but I think coming from the opposite direction as someone who I am queer, so I'll start with that. And I lived in Zambia for a couple of years, and there was this interesting point in time where I think in there was a couple in Zambia that was arrested in, I think, Kabwe in Central Province for, homosexuality, which is illegal in Zambia. And what kind of ended up happening is that there was like a lot of contention based around that, and our ambassador sort of got into not a spat, but like made comments towards President Lungu, the president of Zambia at the time, that I was there, about how it was, wrong, and he sort of condemned it as an overreach of power, because I think they were sentenced to 15 years in prison, this couple, and it kind of put this interesting dynamic in the community of Americans that were there at the time, where there's kind of like this increased like vision and like look out for like homosexuality amongst American populations, and like there's a lot of discourse between people trying to like figure out like try and like root out the influence and things like that. And there was a lot of pressure from like the few like gay people that like gay Zambians that I knew there, that was there's extra pressure and like extra fear and tension amongst them too. So it's not necessarily like a comment or a question, I guess, like an anecdote of like how these things have, I've seen them manifest personally, but I imagine it's a lot different if you've been living there. I have the privilege of being able to come back where it is legal.
Wow. Thank you, John, for sharing. And I think it's actually quite interesting you talking about Zambia, because Naomi can actually tell you that currently we're running a program at the organization that I work with, and we are doing those hard topics, like we're implementing issues to do with the rights for the LGBT community, safe abortion, issues to do with contraceptives for teens. And Zambia is one of the countries that is very, very conservative. Actually, the president, I think several years ago, it's actually declared a Christian state. That is what actually is known for. And so, of course, there's a lot of a religion that comes into play. When you want to talk about some of the issues, like people will just look at you like you're crazy, and it is something that you cannot openly talk about. I think they also have those punitive laws where it's punishable by law. I think you can also be stoned, and it is something that is like literally in Zambia you cannot even speak about having any other different sexual orientation apart from the one that people are actually accustomed to, or rather what people actually know. That actually now brings us to the other topic that we wanted to talk about in terms of our sexuality, also in terms of the different the different sexual orientation that actually do exist. So I know when talking about sexuality, we're basically looking at how we relate with others and what you feel like you're attracted to. Like, for instance, if you are a man, are you attracted to another man? If you're a man, are you attracted more to a female? Or if you're a man, do you find yourself being attracted to both? So now that brings the issue of the LGBT, so that we're talking about the lesbian bit. That is at least female and female who sort of feel like they have an attraction to, like a female who is attracted to another female of the same sex, of course. And for the guys, of course, it has to be the G part, that is the gays, where a man is attracted to another man. Then for the B in LGBT, we're talking about bisexual. So bisexual is where you have an interplay of both. You are a man, but you are hitting both male and female. So you are like in between there. So when we're talking about the sexual orientation LGBTQ, the first three, that is LG and B, that is lesbian, gay, and bisexual, basically is about sexual orientation. It's about what your feelings are, what you are true to. Like, who do you feel more attracted to? We're talking about now the other part of transgender, queer, those other things. Now we are talking about gender identity, what do you really identify with? So that is now just trying to unpack the whole issues of LGBT, because it's coming up in our discussion. So just proceed on. I think we can now talk about the next point. Many countries in Africa believe that diverse sexuality is wrong. Thus, the criminalization of same-sex relationships, which is among the main contributing factors to demonizing of people of same-sex relationships in Africa. And even as we continue with these presentations, I think there's a point where we have some laws and policies, and also I'll be showing a map of Africa just to try to give an insight on what are some of the countries which have progressive laws, which ones are still very, very uptight in terms of opening it up. We'll just look at that in the next few slides. So also on this, we're talking about African leaders continue to sell the narrative that homosexuality is an African, which is widely made, claim that has been made to justify vigilantism and state repression against sexual minorities throughout the continent. So it is very common to hear most of the African leaders going out and saying that anything to do about sexuality that is not heterosexual, it is something that people are borrowing from the West. But these are things that are within us. There's no research to show whatsoever that in the African context, the growing number of people who are not predominantly heterosexual, people who are in other sexual constructs, have actually been proven to be just people that are born and bred within the African system. They have not necessarily really interacted with the West in that way. So it is not true to actually say that most of these things are because there's that influence from the Western economies. Yes, of course, we know most of these African countries were colonized by the West, both of course during the colonial, pre-colonial, and even before. All those periods, yes, there's been interaction of all that, but this is something that's so unique about Africa. But because of the laws that we have, it's becoming very, very repressive in the way people express themselves. So the next point is same-sex relations in most African countries is largely frowned upon. In fact, in some countries, it attracts death penalties, as is the case for Mauritania, that is among the Muslim men. Nigeria, we have in the northern states. Also, we have in Sudan and Somalia. So these are some of the countries that are widely known for really having punitive and extreme measures of really trying to criminalize anything to do with any other sexual orientation that is not heterosexual. Sexuality in Africa has been reduced to sex, the act. There's more to sexuality than just sex. Sexuality is deep and involves a person's soul, being, and existence. So based on what Naomi has actually talked about in her presentation, we are seeing that there's that bit of being assigned that role, so that you are told if you are a man, and there's this thing about African thing, like if you are a man, you are made to believe that you are the one to, like for example, first of all, you'll be told that the acceptable relationship will be when you bring a girl home or a woman, or you get married to one. Then you'll also be told that it is you who is supposed to pursue the girl and just make sure that you try to show her that you love her, to win her heart. But it will be so weird. I mean, in African context, they look at it so weirdly. If a woman feels like they're attracted even to a guy, then the woman is the one who is making like the first move to a guy. So it is like also, again, a preserve that even if you are a woman and there's this guy you've seen and you really like this guy, we have this thing of you're not supposed to open up, you're not supposed to share your feelings and actually outrightly come and say that, hey, I know you are cute and all that, and I feel like I like you, we can start something. So for us, it's something that you cannot even go into because the society will look at you as a deviant of sort. So you see, for us now, it's been like sexuality is about the act. So they don't want to look at, there's that bit of not really wanting to look at the feelings and just trying to appreciate that people are different. People have different ways of handling issues and that the attraction can actually come in many different ways apart from what is actually already defined by most of the people that we know here in African content. Then now I'll finish up by looking at some of the policies and just some of the facts and figures concerning Africa and sexuality. So we have 54 countries, 54 countries in Africa, and 33 out of the 54 actually criminalize same-sex. So this is actually almost 3/4 of African states. They have laws that are very punitive, from of course, jail terms, death sentences. We have also correctional sex. Correctional sex is where if you're like, let's say if they identify you as a gay man, they will send men to come and like gang rape you in an effort of trying to make you go back to the norm, like now going back to having sex with, or rather getting relationship with the person of the opposite sex. So that's the correctional sex thing. So currently South Africa and Guinea-Bissau have the most progressive laws and policies that advocate for same-sex relationship and even marriage. South Africa, I think, was the first African country that actually legalized same-sex marriage. It's made a lot of strides, and it's one of the countries that we can say that is a benchmark for trying to advocate for the rights of people who are within the spaces of, especially in the LGBT community, and just trying to talk about and appreciating the different sexual orientations. South Africa is that country in Africa. Though, of course, the laws may be progressive, the laws may be a little bit conducive for such relationships, but then again, on the backdrop, you'll find that they also have a lot of challenges, like the religion. Now, when the religion comes into play, they will not appreciate the fact that the government is okay with same-sex marriages. So you find still there's a lot of stigma among the people who tend to be this kind of unions where it's of the same sex and that kind of a thing. So it is more of cut and game. We give here, but we take from this other end. Then the other one, you're talking about the most recent criminalization of same-sex sexual relationships in the world is enshrined in Article 354 of Chad's 2017 Penal Code. I think these are some of the recent cases of some of the recent penal codes that actually are affecting the areas of sexuality, and Chad is one of them based on the 2017 Penal Code. Then the notion of vices against nature was removed from the Mozambique's Penal Code. Again, this is like recently, 2015, and that one for Angola was actually removed in 2019. So these are some of the, just a few policies that we have going on currently. But of course, there are things that are being updated, of course, due to a lot of, there's a lot of human rights organizations, which are basically out there trying to fight for the rights of these people, trying to hold the government accountable, and just trying to hold the duty bearers also accountable by coming up with laws and policies and guidelines that can actually create a conducive environment for these people to operate from and just live their normal lives. Yeah, so I'll finish up with this map that I had promised to share with you also. I don't know if it is so clear, but if you look at it, it's an African map. And yeah, so if you look at the map, we have all the African countries, and then there is also some information concerning either the situation as it is in terms of sexuality. Remember, we talked about some of the countries which have like death penalties for people who are caught in sexual acts of the same sex, which I already mentioned. So this is actually one of the maps that shows such. So like if you see for this purple color, it's written death penalty in some areas. We have here like Nigeria, we have Somalia. So this is where like where I was actually getting that kind of data. Then maybe you can just again like another one. We look at the one that has there's this death penalty. It's the shade is almost dark brown, where we have death penalty. You can actually see here out to Mauritania, there's death penalty. Also in South Sudan, there's also death penalty. Then there's imprisonment up to life. That shade also can actually see some countries like South Sudan. Of course, we have Zambia here again. We have Tanzania, we have Uganda, even our own Kenya. So you see, it is something that's actually cutting across most of the African countries. Then if you look at the other ones that have imprisonment of up to 8 years, there are many. You see, like there's Algeria, there's Morocco, there's Libya, there's Chad. Since I know Emmanuel comes from Malawi, let me just look at Malawi and see also for them in terms of what they really, what the country is all about. I don't know if there's any statistics, and sorry, just a minute. There's something interesting also to share. Yeah, so Malawi is here, just bordering Zambia to the south and Mozambique on this other end. And I think it also falls in the country where there is imprisonment up to life. Yeah. So you find that, so if you look at this the African map, it can actually give you like a more glimpse, or just try to give you a broader perspective of what we really are talking about when you are talking about sexuality. So even as I want to wrap up now, maybe I'll talk about just something small. So just to do like a recap. So in terms of when talking about the gender identity, we talked about gender, then there's now the gender identity. So this is basically what you really identify yourself with. The society may have assigned you, I mean, at birth, biologically, you may have been born with a penis to show that you are a man. The society now identifies you as a man. But there's that thing that you identify yourself, that is that thing that is so true to you. Like when you sit down, when you are presented in a situation where you have a male and a female figure, who are you attracted to more? So in the gender identity, we are looking at your inner feelings, which can be either that you are attracted to this person of the same sex or another person of a different sex. So Naomi had also talked about non-binary. So in non-binary, we are looking at where you identify as like you don't identify as neither. You identify as neither. So you really don't know if you're attracted to a male figure. You really don't know if you're attracted to a female figure. So you are just there. Or sometimes it's actually confusing where you find yourself. You are in both ways, where you find that it's like what we are talking about bisexual, where you tend to have some feelings for people of the both sexes. Then the gender fluid also Naomi had talked about. So here it just shows that this is somebody who also can move from one gender, from one sexual orientation to another easily and freely, like where you feel like you can easily associate and easily relate with a person of this sex, and you can also associate with the person of the other person of the other sex. But it is something that is done over a given period of time. We had already indicated that we're talking about gender, or rather what you feel about the feelings that you have, what you identify with. It is something that changes over time. Naomi had mentioned that. And also it is something that changes based on also the environment. There's a growing, like right now, there's a growing online platform. There's a lot of connection of people globally. We are now calling it a global village. We have these dating sites where it has become so easy for people to communicate, to get to relate with people from different other countries in different other continents. And this is where people actually even shape their sexuality even further. This is where people get to connect with people who are like of the same beliefs, or rather the same sort of understanding in terms of what they feel about their sexuality and all that. So we'll talk about social media platforms, dating platforms. Like I know most of us know Tinder. The other day there's that series or other movie that was trending, Tinder Swindler, which was talking about the way people meet, match, and then they hook up and all that. So there's that space. Then there are many other platforms that have actually come up. And if you look at people's profile and bio, I think people have actually gone so open nowadays. People will just tell you, I'm gay, I'm looking for a gay partner also. People will just tell you that I'm straight, so I'm looking for a person of the opposite sex. So it has really helped to shape the discussion, where you see that in that space of internet and technology, people can actually see and feel like, oh, I can actually express myself through this platform. If my parents can listen to me, if my friends can listen to me, or appreciate my feelings or what I'm actually attracted to, there's this space where I can actually come and actually connect with people and vent out. And you find that these social media platforms, they have like very many followers. They have like very many people who are already registered and they have accounts, having conversations and all that. And it has also sort of helped people to sort of be true to themselves. So I think I want to leave it at that, but I think there's someone who sent something on chat. In which country is a gay man raped by men? This one I was talking about, I was giving an example of correctional sex. So correctional sex is the type of sex where, like let's say if you are gay, gay man, that means that you are a man who is having sex with another man. That people will plan in the community, people will plan for you to be gang raped. They will send a group of men to come and gang rape you, not one man. They can be 2, 3, or even more than. So that they rape you with the intention of making you sort of punishing you for your sins of being in a gay relationship. So they're trying to correct you back into like sort of going back to what they feel is the norm, which is the heterosexual type of sex. So I don't know if maybe up to there is somebody with a question, or maybe we can get into plenary. I know Naomi wants to take us to the through the last set of the presentation, which is more of some questions to reflect and ponder about. Before she does that, maybe if we can get some reaction, maybe some questions on the chat, you can just unmute and speak freely as Naomi prepares.
So Martin, I have a question.
Yes, please.
But I want to say thank you so much to you, both you and Naomi, for this wonderful and enlightening presentation, because I know you're currently working in an organization and the fields that you have the most updated data, I could say, at least of what's going on in the different countries that you operate in. So my question is, I see nowadays more people, comparatively, I would say, more people are coming out. Let me give an example of Kenya, because that's where I watch news and social media information platforms, different platforms. At what point are let's say people who are not heterosexual, let's say gay, let's just give an example. At what point are they penalized? Because I've seen people come out and I don't really know that have they been judged. At what point do people get penalized for either coming out or being out as not heterosexual?
Okay, so I think for the Kenyan context, since you asked about Kenya specifically, they have no, it's actually funny because what they actually the law says is that they have no problem with the relationship, but they have a problem with the act. So like if for instance, there are men who are acting in a manner to suggest that they are an item or a couple, they won't take it up, but for them, they now have an issue with criminalization of them like having sex or rather being caught in the act of actually having sex. So it's been a debate of now flipping the coin the other side. If a man is going to have sex with a woman in public, is it allowed? Of course, it's not allowed because that is a private thing. So also for these gay men, there's no way, of course, they are going to have sex in public because it is still something that is not allowed. So you see, there's no clear cut. There's no clear cut. There's an echo, I think, from somebody. There's no clear cut sort of way of handling, actually punishing these groups of people. So what we have actually seen in Kenya, not just in Kenya, even in most African countries, when you go to Uganda here, what is really happening is that there's a lot of vigilantism against same-sex relationships. There's a lot of people taking the law into their own hands, and it is more of mob justice. So where you'll find that it's the community that if they feel like these people are out there behaving in a manner likely to suggest that they are in that space, then people will decide what to do with them, where in most cases they will be beaten up. We've had cases of some of them being beaten up to death, yes, but now people being taken to courts, and now you hear that they are here and they are witnesses, and you know the way the court proceeding goes, they are witnesses, then there's the calling, and until a verdict is actually reached that these people are homosexuals and they need to be jailed for this blah 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 number of years. That one hasn't really come out, especially not in the country that I've worked across, but it is more of just what the community people, I mean, just what the society feels like is what they are trying to do in the name of protecting either the growth of LGBT community. Because according to them, it's like if they allow them to do, to continue with, let's say, same-sex relationship, it is like encouraging the coming up generations to be also in that kind of similar space. I don't know if I've answered you. I don't know, maybe if Naomi has something to add on that.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Naomi, do you have something to add? I see there is something from Sophia.
I think what you said is quite the scenario, and it's really difficult sometimes to convict because sex is a private act. So if you're going to convict someone, you need witnesses, you need evidence, and how are you going to collect that? So that's what makes it really difficult to convict, especially in the country where we reside and where we work in.
Okay, thank you, Naomi, for the input. So Sophia on chat, she has asked, will the typical family disown a gay family member, or will it be another reaction entirely? Yes, that is actually the unfortunate scenario, or rather what really happens in most African nations. So first of all, like I'd already indicated, that for most of these African nations, people are more, they are Christians. So the biggest reason why we have sexuality in Africa really being constrained is because of the church. Like the church is the biggest hindrance. So you find that the laws, they may be progressive, like you give an example of South Africa. But now when you go to the other things that affect a person's life, like for example, you know, a human being is made up of different things that surround her or them. So you find that there's you politically, there's you socially, there's you religiously, there's you everything around you. So if the law actually is okay with a same-sex relationship, but the religion is really now taking that right from you, you find that there isn't so much of a bigger gain. That's why I'm even talking now of implementations, or rather doing programs in the spaces of lobby and advocacy, where you're trying to sensitize people and drum up support for some of these things. So for what I know, currently homosexuality is like it is hugely stigmatized in most African countries. That is a fact. We've already given that figure of around 35. We talked of how many countries? We talked of 33 out of 54 countries actually criminalize same-sex. This just goes to show you the extent to which people in African countries are hell-bent on not really advocating for any other kind of sexual relationships. So we've had parents who are really in denial. A child who feels attracted, like a boy who is a teenager, who is in high school, they've just started developing that puberty stage, and maybe they're just trying to, their bodies are just growing. It's a lady who has a lot of issues with her bodies, and she feels like she's getting attracted to another lady. In African context, they will never even share it with their parents, because it is something that you cannot even bring yourself, you cannot wrap yourself around come to your parents and tell them, look here, I'm attracted to a person of the same sex. They will pray for you, they will take you for rehabilitation, they'll try all means and ways to make you now go back to what they feel is actually the normal thing. So yes, your question, according to what you've asked, it is very true that there are cases where they will be disowned. Or the other part is that, or will it be another reaction entirely? The reaction, of course, is that there's a lot of stigma, and it doesn't matter. You'll be stigmatized from people who know you to people who don't know you. In fact, people who know you will stigmatize more than even people who don't know you. Because people who don't know you can have some form of empathy and all that, but people who know you will feel like this is not us, this is not African. They will even try to justify in the sense of this thing does not even exist in our family lineage. We've never had a case of gay relationships among your brothers or your forefathers and all that. So that is how they actually tend to sort of make it be like something so big. I don't know, Naomi, if you have something to add on that, because I've also seen something on joking.
Yes. I think what you have said is correct, and maybe I can respond to John Keen's question.
Okay.
What organization are we involved in? We work for an organization called the Forum for African Women Educationalists. It's a Pan-African organization. Primarily, we work in the space of girls and women's education, and part of that is promoting rights, human rights for all. And Martin, one of the programs that we run is the one that Martin works with, and it's called the MECWE program. And it's the one that specifically is working in a few of the African countries to tackle the issue of the issues that we're talking about, especially on rights, on LGBTQ plus rights, safe abortions, and contraceptives for young women. Martin, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, and I see we have another hand up from Resty.
Yeah, maybe the other part of what John King has asked. The map is very sobering. Yes, it is, by the way. And I think we can share the slides, of course, with permission from Damaris and Emmanuel, who have them. So how do you figure out where to begin with your type of work? Normally, I think you hadn't captured this one, but I think now if you look at the kind of investment that the donor community is investing in development programs in African countries, initially it was more about HIV and AIDS. There was a lot of money that was poured to just try to fight the HIV and AIDS pandemic, which has made a lot of progress. Now it's really increased. There's a lot of people who have been identified who are HIV positive and put into care. They are now on treatment, and they are mostly virally suppressed because of adherence training and all that. But now the issue has been, it's realized that in terms of sexual reproductive health, because you know, sexual reproductive health is like a very bigger umbrella. When you look at a person, you just can't look at one area. You have to look at many other factors that actually affect their sexual reproductive health. So there was a lot of gaps in terms of some of the things that we felt like are very pertinent, which we are so happy that the donor community has been alive to that fact, and they have also come up now to really fund daring programs. When we talk about daring programs, we are talking about not the usual easy to do implementations. We are talking about those hard topics. We are talking about those things that people don't want to hear, as much as they know they exist, but people want to give a deaf ear on it. So what we actually do in terms of this kind of programming, first of all, we are now working with in consortiums, or rather in allies. So I've been now I think I've now worked for 4 different consortium programs. And I've realized it's a trend now that if you are, I've noticed most of us have done social work from what I gather. So if in that space, you'll realize that nowadays donors are very comfortable giving money to 2 organizations to come together, put the expertise together and implement the program. So for us, that is how actually we are also doing it right now. We are working in a consortium where now we have 6 organizations that have come up together. They have teamed up. And the main goal of the program, like the one we are running now, which is called MECWE, is to ensure that there's access to sexual reproductive health, information, and rights to the marginalized people in the community. Those who are literally left behind. We are looking at people who are disabled. If you come to most of the African countries in terms of also access to sexual reproductive health, you'll realize that those people who are disabled are really discriminated. Like if you go to a health facility and you are disabled and you are going to ask for a contraceptive, they will look at you like you also have sex. Like they expect you to be disabled. There's no way you're supposed to be having sex. You get pregnant and you are disabled in your wheelchair. People will be like, oh, how did you get pregnant? So those are some of the things that we are doing. We are just trying to make sure that we are doing a program that is a little bit not easy to do. It's a 5-year one, and of course there's a lot of lobby and advocacy. The best way of handling such programs, like sexuality issues on sexual orientation and LGBT, is mostly through lobby and advocacy, because through that, when they hear about us talking about it, they actually come out. And when they come out, they start speaking out. Now they really start raising the issues, and they help us shape the discourse and coming up with some policies and guidelines on how they can also be protected from, of course, the communities that they come in who actually tend to sort of discriminate them. So Naomi, I think maybe we've tackled that one for John King.
Yes, we have. There's a hand up from Rusty. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Naomi. For me, I'd like to ask, as you talk about African countries, the issue of homosexuality. I believe it's not a Christian thing as such, because Africa, we have African traditions. And in our view, from my context as an African woman, I believe in the culture that upholds me as an African woman. And in the African society, I don't think homosexuality is one of our practices, because for us as Africans, we look at our sexuality as a reproduction. It's not a thing for luxury. It's not something to show off, like you see that different worlds do that. So maybe I don't know at what level you're presenting this, but I would wish you look at the different theories, the different backgrounds of different societies, and try to argue out some of these issues, like, you see, there's this background and so on, because context is a very good place to start from whenever you try to do research. Context, what works in Africa may not work in Europe, and what works in Europe may not work in Africa. Even if it's a positive or negative thing, context is a very important thing. And I also would like to say that while you continue to advocate for this, where do you put the, maybe the guardianship? How do you sort out their mental health coming out, having a person who's going definitely against your culture? And then as you continue to advocate, I'm a secondary school teacher and I'm from Uganda. I'd like to inform you that one of the worst things that has come across in Uganda is that we have people, especially Europeans, roaming around our secondary schools, our actually single-sex schools, and trying to infiltrate our kids and teaching them this, whatever you call it, or a vice. Because for me, in my culture, I believe that someone before 18 should not be having sex as an African person. And you find that there are people around those schools who are infiltrating those schools and trying to use small things like incentives to convince these kids that this is part of them. And being a teacher, I understand that these kids before 18, it's just a state of discovery. It's a puberty stage. So many hormones are going on, and if whatever anything is thrown into their environment, it catches. Whatever it is, it goes on. So I'm of the view that while this advocacy is coming through, let's maintain the ages that are supposed to be sexually active according to our laws and policies in our countries. Let's try to respect that. If someone wants to be 18 and they want to be gay, let them be gay, but let them not come near my boy who is young and touch my boy. And then, so these things go around. I don't know, as a person who's working in the girl child and so on, how do you really take note of this? Because as a teacher, I'm supposed to protect the kids. And whatever sex, whether it's gay, whether it's the opposite sex, they're not supposed to be indulging in sex before 18, okay? And then also another thing, as you continue to advocate, I really have an issue whereby at a certain point, okay, maybe this I read it in research, and I must tell you that while we advocate for all these rights and so on, let's also advocate for people who are not going to, because it looks like now the people who are straight are the ones who are wrong, okay? So let's try also to respect the persons who feel like this is their culture and they need to follow it and they need their space and they don't want to be, convinced and chased around and then condemned and so on. So I have had to read so much literature, and I've read a very traumatizing literature about gay people. And this maybe were adults, yes, but there was, this professor goes into interviewing them, I think it's in the UK, and then there's this issue whereby someone says, I slept with you, I know you're HIV positive, but because I want to show you that I'm very content and I'm in love with you, I have had to do this. I've read that literature, and it has really traumatized me, because a person from Uganda, something about HIV, it's a terror. It's terror. It terrorized the whole of our country, and it left so many kids as heads of families. So I really believe that culture should be respected, and of course also context, because you may say they're having barbaric ways of trying to do this, but you are not respecting where they're coming from. You see, while the Western world could advocate for this, Western world sex is looked at as different ways compared to the African context. I submit. Thanks.
Thank you, Rusty, for your contribution, and we appreciate it. This is an open forum for us to share our different opinions. And I think from where we sit and the work we do, our advocacy is to ensure that no one's rights are abused and no one misses out on their human rights because of something that is out of their control. And we can have we have varying conversations on whether it's a choice, whether it's, you know, something that people are just born and you cannot make a choice on that, but that is a conversation that we can continue on. Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Rusty, thank you so very much. Thank you for your contribution. It's a real eye-opener. And I think maybe just to put it in perspective, like Naomi has said, we are not per se advocating for gayism or same-sex sort of relationships. What we are advocating for is for the rights of those people who are already in that space. Because, you know, when you're saying that you're advocating for it, it's like now we are going to change a person's mind. Like if a person was a heterosexual, we are telling them, hey, you can also try this other one. No. And then also, like you have said, we have our culture. We all respect our culture, but we have culture that is, what do we call it? We have culture just like laws. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. And when you're looking at a culture that even has a way of even bringing about punitive measures like death and killing of people, those are the kind of things that we really don't want to advocate for. So what we are trying to say is, we have given an example of children having sex, or rather minors having sex. When you look at this kind of a discussion, it's actually something that is very debatable. The initial discussion you're talking, let me give you an example with teenage pregnancies. Now there's a lot of huge cry across the globe, if I'm not wrong. Teenage pregnancies have actually been going on the high up, especially when you look at the African countries during COVID, when they were at home. The numbers of girls who ended up getting pregnant over that period, like almost doubled. And that was because they had a lot of time at their hands. They didn't get a good guidance. And so, of course, automatically, yes, they end up having unprotected sex, and that is where now the pregnancies were coming from. On the flip side, when we have programs that, let's say, drum up support or rather advocate for safe sex by use of contraceptives, using condoms and all that, I don't think it will be right to say that that kind of a program is encouraging them to have sex. It's actually telling them that you're already sexually active, which you already know some of them are sexually active. Actually, when talking about teenage pregnancies, you will be so surprised. The sexual debut basically refers to the age of you having sex the first time. In most African countries, is so low, Some of these children start having sex at the age of 12 and 13. So when you say that maybe it should be a preserve of people of this particular age group, it is something you have no control over. What you can only do is to bring something like comprehensive sexuality education and tell them that sex is not good at this particular age. So that is now the age appropriate kind of information. But then if they're sexually active and you know there's nothing you can do telling them not to be sexually active, you can bring the discussion of them negotiating for safer sex. The discussions of them like engaging in sex where they know they're still in school and they need to prevent possible pregnancy for them to transition from one level of education to another. So it is not per se about literally advocating for it, but just trying to come up with a sober discussion and agreeing to the fact that these things exist. So in our communities in Africa here, and I can tell you for free, it's not about even the influence from the West. There is a growing number of people who are already homosexual, and they have not been identified and been like mobilized to be homosexual. There are people who are homosexual and they are really discreet because of the environment in which society has put them, which really like shrinks their right to actually practice what they feel is their sexual orientation. So it is just more of trying to say that if we have this kind of people in our communities, can we have that mind of that can we accommodate them in such a way that we also respect their space? That is how they want to practice their sex. You want to practice your sex this other way of male and female, we're okay with it. But if these people, they have decided that for them, they want to practice their sex as male and male, and you really honestly have no control over it, at the end of the day, they will still have it. But we are saying they are humans. That's when we're talking about their human rights. We need to come up with laws and policies that actually protect them. That's why we have this kind of a chart that we are flashing here, just to show and put into perspective what are the different countries doing that others are not doing. And just trying to bring a conversation of trying to understand where we are all coming from. But the bottom line is that we are all human beings and we are entitled to some level of protection. It doesn't matter what we are doing, if it is right to your eye or it is wrong to your eye. I also submit there. Naomi, I think we have some
yes,
more.
we have another question in the chat from Sophia. Is the stigma around HIV connected to the perception of queerness? And as I think this is common across the world, even for those who are in America, then you know that the stigma around HIV initially was around gay men and how that affected communities. But this is changing with time because we now understand what HIV is. We have a better knowledge of it and a better understanding of it as an illness. And so the stigma around it being as a result of same-sex relations has slowly changing, and more information that can change. Maybe Martin, we can go to a few of the other questions. The last slide as we
There's something very restless. Abstinence is now going out of the window because we believe in children's rights. Yeah, true. It's unfortunate, but it's also a tricky balance. It's a question of, are they having sex or not? It's a question of what is the reality on the ground. And we cannot assume that they're not. They are having sex. There's data to prove it. There's research to prove it. And in fact, in Africa, where we tend to be very low in terms of good documentation, really improved. Health systems of the African countries now, they are much better. If you go to a typical local facility, you will get data in, they're collecting it even in the computer, which can be to the national grid. You can get like a representation of really who is this person getting pregnant, how old are they, is this the first or the second or the third pregnancy, and all that kind of data. So what I know for real, especially for the few countries that I've worked in the African context, abstinence is not working. Yes, Naomi, maybe you can do the last. Yeah. You can take us through the last one.
Yeah, and maybe also to add on to what Martin has said, we are not saying that students and young children cannot practice abstinence. we are saying yes, abstinence is part of what we teach in sexual education, but let us not also ignore what else is happening, supported by data and facts. And the truth, what is there is that actually kids are having sex, like finding children who are in high school and they're already engaging in sex. So provide them with the full information on what that entails. What are the risks? What are the challenges that can come with it? How can they protect themselves so that if that does happen and they're not practicing abstinence, then they are able to protect themselves. Okay, so we'll move to a few of the discussion questions. And I think our first question is, how can we be more accepting of gender, sexuality, diversities in our African context? Do we think that this is something attainable, or is it something that is out of our reach? Do you think that it's possible to reach a situation where we are accepting of people of different gender and sexuality, diverse sexualities in our communities? Okay, as we think on that, maybe I can also ask another question and we can just try to respond to them as we go. And is it possible for these ideas to exist alongside strong religious and cultural beliefs? As we have identified, in African communities, there are strong religious and cultural beliefs. It's possible for the views on gender and sexuality to coexist. Is homosexuality ungodly or un-African? Or is it that we are just beginning to accept what we cannot change? What roles can we play in our immediate environment to ensure that diversity and inclusion is appreciated in pursuit of equality for all, equity and equality for all? And I think Martin took us through that last one on how we can promote equity and equality for all. So maybe I want to hear from those of us who are still left as we wrap up. Do you think that is homosexuality un-African and ungodly? And is there room for our different views to coexist in our societies while still protecting the rights of all human beings?
Okay, Naomi, maybe I can just share a little bit. I definitely know that this topic is very content. How can I even say? There's so much discussion that should or has to go around this discussion because, as we said, the topic or the discussion of gender and sexuality is shaped by so many things. Culture is one, religion is another. And when we talk about our African culture, it's very hard to separate culture and religion, at least in my experience, because almost the entire continent is religious in some way. It doesn't have to be Christianity, it could be Islam, it could be other different religions. So when you start discussing a topic like this, what happens is you don't know how to separate yourself from as a person from the culture itself. Like I'm African, I'm Kisi, that's where I come from in Kenya. And then I'm a Christian at the same time. So when I discuss a topic like this, who am I? Like, where am I discussing it from? You know?
Yeah.
Because really religion is intertwined with our cultures. And when we start talking about gender, sexuality, and thank you so much for the definitions that you've given and trying to make us understand what it is, what is sex, what's gender at the same time. So I believe that Christianity and maybe our own cultures have so much influence how we define or how we look at a subject like this, because as Resty was discussing, I think Resty has left, it's very difficult, because what we know from Christianity and what we know from our cultures is sex or marriage is for procreation, period. That's where if I get married and I don't happen to be blessed with children, then there's so many questions around that. So what we know, like we are brought up to understand that the reason why major reason or the emphasis in marriage and a relationship or what can I even call it, like sex, is for you to have children. It's no other thing. So when you start talking about homosexuality, it's hard for somebody from that culture to understand that where is the aspect of children in your relationship. So if you can't prove that you're going to have your own children in that relationship, then it becomes difficult. But what we're trying to say as well, how I convince myself or how I try to teach myself is that I believe in God, and God is a God of love. And God wants us to accommodate one another. Besides my culture, besides all that I believe about religion and culture, the bottom line, if God is defined as love and God loves everybody, then who am I as a person to judge anyone, whether it's something that I believe in, whether it's a sexual orientation that I believe in or I want to practice? Who am I to judge somebody else? So what I believe in is that, or what I really look forward to, is having a society where we accommodate one another, because cultures change, everything changes. But the bottom line is, how do we treat one another? Even when it's hard to understand, or when it's very hard to believe in anything that you might not be exposed to. What I'm speaking to this as a person, as an individual, because I don't have the expertise that you have in this field as you do. I come down and say, the bottom line is we should accommodate one another, regardless of the culture that we find ourselves in, regardless of whether we're Africans, we're Europeans, we're Americans, whoever we are. I think for me, the bottom line is, it's not for me, it's not in my place to categorize, to judge, to do anything about a human being, because I don't want somebody to do that to me. So basically, as hard as it is, as a person, as an individual, I believe that where we should start is, if it's about religion and culture, then love is the dominant word. And if love is the dominant word, I'm not the person to kill somebody because of who they are or whom they've even chosen to be. Let's say they choose to be. Whatever you think about it, just leave it to that God that you believe in to take care of that part. So that's what I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Any other reactions? I see we have Tommy, Sophia, Blessing, and John still in the room. Okay, I see John has put in the chat, LGBT people exist regardless of culture. I grew up gay in a rural area where it was not too accepted or not talked about. I like to imagine that God has intentionally made different kinds of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see like we have any other reactions. So Martin, do you have anything else to add?
And let me just say something small even as we wind up. And thank you so much, Damaris. I was even typing, but I think I can just say it here. So about the issues surrounding these issues to LGBT and sexuality and all, it is about just being accommodative of each other. Mm-hmm. People are fighting different battles, and you as a person, you may find it very weird that a person is in a same-sex relationship. That same person will find it very difficult that you are in a different sex relationship. So we must always find a space where we meet each other and accommodate each other. The only thing I normally keep on saying, and Naomi knows this so much, the need of people to get information about issues to do with sexuality, the dangers. By there is a risk for same-sex relationship as much as there's a risk for different sex relationships. So nothing comes without a price to pay for. So people need to be first of all, to be informed. They need to have the information. Then there's a lot of also what we call values clarification. So values clarification is just trying to go through some set of questions and some set of trainings that tries to massage your attitude, your background, your knowledge, and what you think about yourself and what you think about others, which can really also help you in making a lot of informed decisions in terms of how to stay with them. Then the last one is just about respecting each other's space, so that even if I'm straight, even if I'm having sex with, I'm a person who is having sex with a woman, I wouldn't be comfortable doing it in public where people see it, as much as heterosexuality is accepted, as much as it's accepted. So also for gay people, they need to respect the space of other people, so that whatever they do it in their own privacy. That's what I can say. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Damaris.
Okay, thank you, Martin and Damaris, for those amazing wrap-up comments. And I think for me, yeah, I agree. It's all about, and putting yourself in someone else's shoe. I think empathy plays a big role in our understanding and appreciation of how diverse and different we can be. Because once you understand that someone's rights and are being abused by, if they do not have access to a service or access to a space because of their sexuality or their gender, and you can put yourself in that person's shoe and, what would it mean to you? So I think empathy is a good place to start, and also being accommodative and being open-minded, and also being informed, because once you have the true facts and understanding of what's actually happening in reality beyond the scope of our ideas and beliefs in the spaces that we are in, then we can open up. So I thank you, Damaris, for inviting us to engage and share in this forum, and I will hand it back over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Martin and Naomi. I would say usually this is a very difficult topic to handle, especially when you're speaking from the African perspective of the subject. But that doesn't mean that we cannot talk about it. And that's the reason why we feel that people who are not knowledgeable in this subject would be the best people to lead the discussion, because they understand the facts. They work in spaces like this all the time, because that's where you are in. And you better give us the place to begin, not even to begin to continue conversations like this. So we are really grateful that you had to spare your time. Is it 1 now? Going to 1?
Going to 1 a.m.
It's going to 1, but we want to thank you so much. And as I said, this recording will be posted on YouTube under the African Studies Center website. And I'm going to share it with you, just in case you don't get a chance or you don't remember to visit our website and check it out. I'm going to share it with everyone, but others who might be at MSU, you can go to the African Studies Center, perhaps maybe this coming week, sometime this coming week, it should be posted. So you can review, you can share, you can use it. Sometimes you can use it even in your class if you're discussing a topic like this. So we record it for educational purposes, and it's out there for everyone to be able to use it. But I really want to thank you, Naomi and Martin, for helping us discuss this topic. And we look forward to, this is our last one this semester, as I said in the beginning. We look forward to working with you more. Perhaps you can revisit and talk about what has happened, what's new, what are other ideas that are coming out of discussions like this. So thank you so much. We definitely appreciate, and I look forward to engaging with you more. Thanks, Tammy and John, for staying. Blessing, Mavima Shingi. I call you Blessing because that's what I see on the screen, but this is Shingi. And Sophia for staying with us until the end. We appreciate your time. So bye-bye. Have a good night, Naomi and Martin. And the rest of us have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.